So I have another work in progress for my mind transformation. And this is going to take a long time. But anyway, it came up sort of unexpectedly about a week ago. And it's expectations. And the definition for me is the erroneous notion that the world, parentheses, beings, situations, and objects will perform, function, respond, and behave as I wish so that I can be happy in this life. And then the more accurate, concise definition is the major source of my suffering, because none of the above is true. Okay, so then, and thinking, and I said, well, why do I have them, and what's the cause of them? Sort of following a little bit like the Four Noble Truths. First of all, my self-centered thought is probably the major cause of having expectations. And for me, that's the misconception of me, I, as being the be-all and end-all of the universe. And that everybody else, everything else, every other situation, their total purpose for being here in this world is to cater to this very special I who is the center of the universe. And what makes that even more of an incredible misconception is that I really believe that that is an objective purview of the world. That's because the level of expectations that I have in my life, I have to believe on whatever gross or subtle level that that's what this world is about. To take care of, to behave, to function, to perform, and to make me happy. The third reason for the expectations is that I don't really have any deep understanding of the three characteristics. That cyclic existence, which is having this body and mind under the control of afflictions and karma, has as well as everything else that exists, has is uncertain, is by nature unsatisfactory, and that it doesn't, that I don't exist. The things, the people, the situations that are out there that I want to make me happy don't exist the way that I think. But I've got all of this not in my view. I don't have it as an understanding, and so that's totally off to the side when these expectations arise. And then the fourth one is conditioning and karma. I mean, the way that I was raised, the way that I grew up, all of my worldly aspirations came upon that the world had owed me something. There's a sense of entitlement. Maybe it was just my family, maybe it's just the West, maybe it's just being a samsaric being, but there's a sense of entitlement. And then the predispositions, I think just this acquired ignorance that feels that expectations can be met by outside of myself. So then I have indications when my expectations are in process or when they are not being met. So the gross forms, I have a number of quotes, some of my favorite quotes that I use. I can't believe it. I want my money back. I'm leaving. They don't love me. Why is this happening to me? For all I've done for them. And if they or she or he would only, and then I have a whole Excel spreadsheet of what would fill in that sentence. So those are my gross forms of when my expectations are in progress or they're not being met. Subtler forms are frowning, sniffling, sighing, rolling my eyes, gaping mouth, sulking, stone silence. So this is when these are sort of the more gross manifestations and the subtler forms of my expectations not being met or totally taking over. So then I say, well, what is it about expectations? I mean, I'm miserable when I have them. And what it is that it keeps me out of my life of living in the present, because my expectations come from either some sort of momentary past experience that I have invested a whole lot of emotion, a whole lot of craving on that I want to just recreate, represent, and remanifest itself over and over again. Or I've got this really extremely creative imagination that goes future traveling, that conjures up the perfect scenario, the perfect object, the perfect situation, the perfect person. And so because I spend all of my time in the past and all of my time in the future, when the present comes, I'm surprised. And the expectations are built totally around not being in the moment. Expectations keep my afflictions alive, particularly my anger and all myriad forms of that, because it's about not getting what I think I should be getting. So I've got anger in its many, many forms. I've got jealousy. My attachment to my ideas and outcomes gets fed with the expectations. I spend a lot of time manipulating situations, so I do the things like hinting, coercion, flattery, downright deception, because I want these expectations to be met. And so I'm manipulating my world in hopes that that will happen. I use guilt too. And when it comes to objects, so that's with the people and the relationships and situations in my life. And with objects, I have, even though at the Abbey I can't do some of these, I think that they would help. Is that I would want to consume more, replace, upgrade, trade in, yell at the customer service voice on the other line until my face is blue. And that would help somehow alleviate and fulfill my expectations. So the whole idea about just getting something else would alleviate the expectation and satisfy it. And this came from a lot of cultural conditioning and whatever. So, so the level of misery that I find myself, when I'm willing to recognize and be honest that there's an expectation in process, and until I'm willing to, first of all, take responsibility for my own emotional life and the state of my mind, this isn't really possible. Because for me, the expectations can be gross, and I can always tell if I'm really upset or I'm angry or I'm pissed off or I get depressed, that there was an expectation somewhere. But to be able to take care of my mind and to see the danger of having expectations is that I've got to be willing to really recognize them for what they are. And it's attachment not getting what it wants. It's the grasping at this I who thinks that she's the center of the universe and deserves it, is entitled to everything going the way that she wants. And working on understanding the three characteristics. You know, if I could just, you know, and as we go through them, and Venerable's been teaching on them when we were doing the Lam Rims in our meditations, there's so much power behind understanding that there's nothing certain in this world. And that by its very nature, it's like one of its fundamental truths is that there's nothing in this world that could ever bring the satisfaction that my expectations think it will. And then thirdly is just to let go of who wants, who needs, who's walking into the room, how does this work, how long is this going to last? That I think that all of this stuff is going to be here forever. The sense of permanency in my mind. And that when people come to me in a certain way that and I like the response, that they're going to come to me like that all the time. You know, and that when we get something new here at the Abbey, despite our best efforts, that is going to last a long time. And so for me to be able to recognize when expectations are going on, the state of mind is usually a good clue that there's something not right. And then to be able to use some of the Buddha's teachings to see that if I come to terms and understand the nature of cyclic existence, the expectations will be aligned, if I have any of them, which I think I'm going to have until I become a Buddha, is to have them more realistic. You know, to kind of set forth logically and with reason, okay, this is how I'm practicing, this is where I am right now, this is probably what's going to happen. I mean, even expectations, even the thought of putting a realistic expectation, that seems to be a little bit like what's it called, an oxymoron? I'm not sure there is such a thing. So I'll think about that a little bit more and I'll let you know what happens from that thought. That'll go off into its future past somewhere soon.